calling the SEC championship game between Alabama and Georgia. Brockman, I think he called in prior to last year's SEC championship.
I think you're right.
So this, like the Masters on CBS, is a tradition unlike any other. Brad Nessler here on the Rich Eisen Show the day before the SEC championship game. Right, Brad? Wouldn't you agree?
How are you, my friend? Good to talk to you.
Great. I'm great to talk to you, too. You are obviously in Atlanta already, correct?
I am. My city, everybody thinks because I live here that it's a home game for me. They don't understand that with that comes the request for tickets and my time and everything else.
Come on, there can't be any.
I'd almost rather this game was someplace else.
There cannot be requests for tickets to a Georgia played SEC championship game in Atlanta, Brad. Come on now. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah,
talk.
I know. 12 months ago, we had this problem when Georgia played Auburn, and then 11 months ago, there was a little issue with Georgia playing Alabama for all the marbles at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And
that's right.
65 days from now, I'll have requests because it's a CBS year for a Super Bowl.
In Atlanta. That's right. And we'll be seeing you. We'll be seeing you for that week. But right now, we've got an SEC championship game. What is Nick Saban like in the pre-broadcast meeting with you and Gary Danielson and the rest of the crew?
He's actually one of the best coaches that we deal with, to be honest with you, and people find that shocking because they tend to watch his press conferences on Monday when he's at the podium with his bottle of Coca-Cola, and he's pretty much putting everybody in their place. I've known Nick since he was Bill Belichick's defensive coordinator at the Cleveland Browns before he even got Michigan State job and subsequently the places he's been. So I think the fact that we've known each other forever, same thing with Gary, there's a mutual respect there. So he maybe treats us a little bit better than he does some people, but I enjoy my time with Nick, and a lot of people find that a little bit shocking.
Well, I mean, so even for a week like this, he doesn't come in any different? What do you glean from him on a week like this, do you think?
That's Nick. That's why Nick is so good. He treats every game like it's the SEC championship and the national championship. There is no wasted time. When we meet them in Tuscaloosa, it's exactly at 11:30 on Friday morning. His cup of coffee has been placed just to his right hand, which is right by my left elbow at the table in the conference room. Everything is the same. That'll be a little bit different today because we'll meet him over at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. So I'm not quite sure where the coffee's coming from. But no, he doesn't change much, and it's the attention to detail at practice, at those meetings, not wasting any time. We'll know exactly when it's time to say, okay, I think we're done asking questions, because he will give that little smile like, okay, guys, are you done? and then it'll be over.
Yeah.
Same thing with Kirby, actually. They're pretty similar that way.
Well, I mean, obviously, Kirby Smart comes from the Saban school. We all know that.
Right.
I mean, does that still matter now? I mean, it's not their first rodeo against each other. Is that still a reasonable, rational, germane storyline, Brad?
I don't think so. Kirby doesn't like it anymore. He has even made the statement this week, I don't want to talk about Alabama. I'm in the third year as a head coach at my alma mater, and we're a pretty dang good team, And I think Nick's tired of talking about being 15-0 against his former assistants. It's just, it's a huge game. They're obviously friends, but you meet a lot of friends in this business when you're coaches. And I think they're just, let's get on with the task at hand and not play that card anymore.
Brad Nessler of CBS before the SEC championship game, joining us here on the Rich Eisen Show. The narrative is that Georgia isn't the same team from last year. Obviously, we're watching Sony Michel and Nick Chubb do what they're doing for the Patriots and Browns, respectively. So that might just be as obvious as it sounds. However, let's get to the granular level. Georgia's not the same team that almost took Alabama down in the national championship game last year, correct?
They're not, Rich, but when you start looking at Elijah Holyfield and DeAndre Swift's numbers, and once they get through this game and whatever bowl game, you're going to find out that it's pretty similar, eerily similar to what Nick and Sony did a year ago. They're not as well known because this is their first year really being the two stars in the backfield. But I think Georgia's ground game is just as healthy as it was this time last year. They're number one in the SEC, 260 yards a game. If Alabama keeps those two to say 150 instead of 260. I think they're playing in to the hands of Alabama's defense. Alabama's defense is getting better. Georgia is getting better. Both teams are better than they were 2 months ago. Georgia lost LSU badly. I think had they stayed with the running attack, I don't think they would have lost that game. And I think if they played LSU 10 times, they'd win 8 of them. We could conceivably have 2 undefeated teams. That would have been great, but we'll still settle for number 1 against
I'm
number
sure,
4.
yeah.
I think that'll rate.
Well, we saw last night in Thursday Night Football, Brad, that a front seven that can get after it and a back end of a defense that can plaster with the front seven getting after it can derail a high-flying offense with a quarterback that is red hot. Now, obviously, Drew Brees has more experience under his belt than Tua. I'm wondering if Georgia has the game plan with the running game you just discussed and the defense to try and shock in the same manner that the Cowboys just did last night.
That is a perfect comparison. If there was a blueprint, that's the thing with Tua as well, just like Drew last night. They got pressure. He doesn't like pressure in his face up the middle. Drew doesn't either because he's 6 feet tall or whatever. Tua is the same size. They don't like to have to look over those big guys. And, Cowboys played great last night on defense. If Georgia had the kind of guys on their side of the ball that the Cowboys had, that would be the perfect blueprint because Tua doesn't like guys around his knees. He doesn't like guys in his face. The perimeter pressure doesn't bug him that much, but when he's got to step up in the pocket and make the throws that he makes, he gets a little bit uncomfortable. Now, does Georgia have those guys? They haven't had good success sacking the quarterback this year. They had 4 against Kentucky. I think that was their season high. They would love to have, if Georgia had the front 4 that Alabama has, then you would be going, this is going to be a problem for Alabama's offense. Unfortunately, they don't have the same kind of guys. So if they can get some kind of pressure up the middle, they got DeAndre Baker on the back end that can maybe take away half the field, but you also got 5 receivers that I think are all high draft choices, including Irv Smith for Alabama. Those cats are unbelievable receivers, and you can't cover them all.
A couple more minutes left with Brad Nessler prior to calling the SEC championship game on CBS at 4 Eastern with Gary Danielson and the rest of the CBS crew. All right, let's go hypothetical and macro. I had Desmond Howard on the show yesterday. He called it illogical to think that an Alabama loss would mean that it's still not one of the top 4 teams in the country for the right to play for the national championship. Do you believe that the result of the game tomorrow does not have any significance in terms of Alabama making the Final Four, Brad?
I think they're in, and I just don't see, and I'm not trying to be a shill for the SEC, Rich, or Alabama or whatever. I've seen them 5 times in person. It's going to be 6 times tomorrow. I watched a lot of other games, and, I've watched Ohio State. I've watched Oklahoma. If one of those teams plays Alabama, Alabama will put 60 points on both those teams with their defense, and if they have to. But if Alabama's not one of the best 4 teams, then I'm watching the wrong game. They've been number 1 since the beginning. They're beating people, by 36 points average. The closest team to them was Texas A&M, I think. I did that game. I think they won by 22, whatever it was. I just don't get it. I mean, I love the argument. I know people want different people in there. They get sick of Alabama, all that. I understand that. But if they're not one of the best 4 teams, I'm watching the wrong game.
So would you agree that the team that's still remaining amongst the possibles to take on Alabama and derail their national championship hopes is the team that's facing them on Saturday, do you think?
I think there's 2 teams right now that if you just said, okay, I'm going to throw a team up against Alabama and they can beat them, that are equipped at least to beat them. Clemson's one, and Georgia's the other one. I don't see anybody else even close. Now, I know that sounds crazy.
Including Notre Dame?
I just don't think the defense is well, you know what? I don't watch Notre Dame enough, and I shouldn't have excluded them. I'm sorry about that. But, Mike Tirico's calling those games while I'm calling mine.
I know,
my buddy.
that's right.
So,
I know. It's we're talking about it already with Duke and college basketball. We're talking about it with Golden State. Everyone just feels that just hand Alabama the trophy right now, Brad. You know?
Well, it's going to be interesting. I think tomorrow will tell us a big tale on, we say that every week, I guess. You get to the Iron Bowl, you get to whatever game, you go, well, now we're going to find out if Alabama's really going to get, pushed. Gary and I have been using that thing all season long, so we'll probably use it again tomorrow. Let's see how good they are.
Well, have a great cast, Brad. Really appreciate you taking the time the day before to chime in, and I will see you at the Super Bowl, if not before, in Atlanta.
I think you're buying when you get here, my friend.
Oh, Brad, you are one of my favorites. You're all hotel bar all time, Brad. You're up there.
I am.
You are.
I'm
I know.
All pro in that area.
You 5 stars. You're 5 stars. Thanks again, Brad. Appreciate it.
All right, buddy.
You
See
bet.
ya.
That's Brad Nessler at Brad_Nessler CBS on Twitter.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.